So, Elvia and I were just talking about other stuff, and we just started recording. But one of the things I'm concerned about is because you're relatively new to real estate and this kind of business that we've been talking about, I want you to be very cautious about trends. Real estate people, investors, developers, all tend to run in groups. They're like sheep, right? One sheep starts running this way, all the other sheep start running that way. That is real estate. And, I've been saying for a number of years that retirement residences are going to be incredibly overbuilt. And they are. Many of them are not profitable today. You would think they are, but they are not. People are now building high rises and it's costing $650 a square foot all in to build a high rise today. And it makes no economic sense, but people are still building them. Just drive around Ottawa, you see all kinds of cranes, and those people are going to lose money, both the investors and maybe not the developers, but the investors will. Right. Cap rates might be 2.5% to 3.5%, and the cost of funds could be anywhere from 5 or 6% to 15%. That's a formula for disaster.
Right.
So what I would want you to be very cautious of, and that's why you have a coach, is if you feel yourself being drawn into some kind of trend where everybody's talking about, you go to the conferences, the real estate conferences in Nashville, in Toronto, in Las Vegas, and everybody is talking about, it wasn't that long ago, everybody was talking about every building was going to be a data center, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so everybody wanted to build data centers, and then they vastly overbuilt them, and they built them in the wrong places. You want to build a data center in a cold weather place, not Arizona, right? So I just want you to be very cautious about all of the trendy stuff. The Scott brothers. I don't mean to pick on the property brothers, but they lure 3,500 people to go on a boat with them, and everybody gets drunk and everybody says we're going to buy this kind of thing. And as I've said to you before, I believe in you, Elvia, and I believe in myself, and I would bet on you to be successful rather than you invest in somebody else who you hope will be successful.
Right.
So, ZenScape, I think, is your personal business for life, and it's both real estate and it's business, it's both, and they are separate. Are you clear about that?
Yep, that's very clear.
And you probably are going to end up with an operating company separate from the real estate company.
Okay.
Okay. Do you understand why that might be important?
Is it to separate the liabilities?
No, it's not.
The ownership? Okay.
No, it's okay. I'm going to draw a picture for you, one of my horrible pictures, but I'll draw it for you anyway. So, let's see. Grab this. So,
or like one company's leasing the land to the other.
Yeah, you'll see in a minute.
Okay.
So this is you, right?
Yeah.
I told you I'm terrible. And I'll send you this picture too. It will be worthwhile. Okay, so this is Elvia. And over here, we're going to have something I'm going to call OpCo. That's for your operating company, all right?
Yeah.
And over here, we're going to have, we'll call it RealCo. And of course, Elvia owns both of them, all right? Now, when I say Elvia up here, Elvia you could own them personally, right? You could own, this will be probably an incorporated company, and this will probably be an incorporated company, all right? But this could be you personally, just you own 100% of the shares in your operating company, and you own 100% of your shares in RealCo, your real estate assets, directly. Or this could be, so it could be, I'll just write it down here. It could be Elvia personally, or and Elvia Holdco. Could be a holding company. Are you with me so far?
Yep.
Okay. Now, so this would be, for example, this would be ZenScape, Hot Springs Retreat. All right, so that's what it would, and it would do that. So it would have all the responsibility for marketing, you know, the glamping sites, for staffing it, you know, all of the operating costs, all of the operating revenues would go into your operating company. And what would happen is the operating company would lease the land or the buildings.
Yep.
Right. And you're an accountant, you know stuff like this.
Yeah.
You would lease the land and the buildings from the real estate company. And if this is a holding company, you know that, you know, and you would lease that land and the buildings at fair market value, not higher, not lower, but it means you can move profits legally within GAAP rules. You move profits from here to here. And you can also have intercompany, if this is a holdco, and they're all Canadian companies, you can have intercompany dividends that go up the chain without any tax consequences.
Right.
Right. And if you had any kids or, you know, a partner or whatever, they could have some ownership in holdco, and there's all kinds of tax efficiencies here. All right. Mm-hmm. But there's also something else that's almost more important. So I'm just going to save this. Hang on. Let me go in here. Whoops. Bet you I have some Elvia pictures already. Yeah, I do, see. All right, Elvia. And I'm sure you know this stuff better than I do. I almost flunked my accounting course. You know, my accountant still has to explain, you know, double entry bookkeeping to me. But anyway, all right. So just add a couple more notes. Corporate, corp, dividends are tax free amongst eligible companies, right? You know that. All right. So okay, we've got a pretty efficient tax structure here, but there's another very fundamental thing that you probably don't know. Okay, just put that, save that there. I know this is a little bit more complicated, so I'm going to stop sharing my screen just for a moment. If you organize your activities like that, 1 plus 1 will equal 3. 1 plus 1 will equal 3. And I'll explain why. Quite some time ago, you know, I owned a building downtown. It was, I don't know, 30 stories or something like that. And we had a company called, the parent company of the first parent company of the Ottawa Centers was called Terrace Investments Limited. So Terrace Investments Limited owned a bunch of office buildings, one of them downtown. And what we had was we had 2 floors in that building, floors 9 and 10, where we put a feature stair between them. And we divided those 2 floors up into mini offices. Do you know what mini offices are?
Is it kind of like, what do you call it? The one that went broke?
Yeah, it's like co-working spaces.
Yeah, okay.
Only we didn't go broke.
Right.
So WeWork was run by a crazy.
WeWork, there you go. Yeah.
WeWork was run by a crazy man. He ran that thing into the ground. He didn't know what he was doing. And by the way, somebody predicted 3.5 years ago WeWork was headed for bankruptcy. I'm not kidding. I've got evidence to that. And I got coaching clients who will attest to this. Oh, no, it's like worth $40 billion. I said, no, it's worth nothing. I turned out to be right, unfortunately. So anyway, we had 2 floors, which we divided into many offices. We had some co-working space in there, but mostly it was private offices, right overlooking Parliament Hill. And it was very successful because there's a lot of, people are very territorial. I've been saying this for a long time. And having the idea of hoteling desks is a terrible idea. So let's say you and I were working in a co-working space and we become friends, and every day I come in, I can hardly wait to see Elvia. We'll have a coffee together. Elvia sits there, I sit there. And I come in one day and somebody else is sitting where I normally sit. I get mad at them, right? People are very territorial. If you have an office, it's your office. Elvia is going to be in her office. I'm going to be there. And we can chat back and forth occasionally, okay? So we had mostly mini offices, very successful operation, made a lot of money. When I went to refinance with the Royal Bank of Canada, the building, the banker, the lead banker from the Royal Bank said, we can't take into account any of the revenues from floors 9 and 10. I said, what are you talking about? We have like I think we had 120 mini offices, of which we were actually over 100% subscribed. Okay. We were over 100%. Now, how can you be over 100%? Because we had so many people on a waiting list. We were putting little library kiosks, the time type that you saw at university, right? Little tiny ones. We were putting them in the hallways where people could, temporarily be while they were waiting for an office to open up. So we were over 100% subscribed, 120 mini offices, making good money. And he said, well, no, the bank doesn't accept little mini office leases. We want, 5 and 10-year leases from major corporations. And by the way, Apple Computer started in that building. I mean, that was a pretty big company even back then. Today it's the biggest in the world. This is relevant to you. I'm not just talking to hear myself talk. You'll understand where I'm going, because this is very important for you. So his name was Wayne Kendall, a smart guy. He said, no, we can't take into account any of the income. And then he said to me, he came up with an idea. He said, Bruce, what you could do is you could create a subsidiary company. So Terrace Investments Limited is the parent company, and create another company, which we did, called Terrace Corporate Centers Limited, TCCL. And you can have Terrace Corporate Centers Limited lease those 2 floors on a 10-year basis with 2 5-year options. And we'll accept those leases, as being long-term leases. I said, but Wayne, isn't that like, the shell game, where you have a P and there's 3 shells and you're trying to figure out where the P is? I said, aren't we? He said, as long as you disclose it to the bank that the same owner, I'll just put it through. I said, okay. So I thought it was a bit of a shell game, but I followed his advice. But he was much more right than I understood at the time. Sometimes it just takes time to learn these things. Here's what happened. We had 120 mini offices downtown, and we had another 44 in a building we owned in the west end of Ottawa. So we had 164, all of them run by Terrace Corporate Centers Limited. So they would pay an office lease, back then it would have been probably $20 a square foot triple net. And then they would rent it out to somebody like Apple Computer, who needed a couple of offices, for probably $60 to $80 a square foot. So it's like Airbnb leverage, if you sort of see what I'm getting at, or wholesaling. Are you following it?
Yep.
Okay. So I put a president in charge of Terrace Corporate Centers Limited. He then had, his name was Greg Graham. He's now president of Cardell. He then had his own bottom line, his own staff, and he made significant improvements in the operations of that business, and some of the things that were losing money, he found ways to turn it around. Some he would stop, some he would farm out to others. And within about 2 years, it had its own financial statements. It was a profitable company, and it could do its own financing. It could have its own line of credit. Right? Do you understand?
Yeah.
So Wayne wasn't just right, he was like 200% right, or whatever the word might be. And that's why 1 + 1 can make 3. So if you had an operating company with its own books, its own bottom line, its own management, and you had a real estate company, again, with its own bottom line and management, both of them will work hard to optimize their operations and their bottom line, and they will go up. So it gives you lots of alternatives, gives you more financing opportunities. And when we got ready to buy the hockey team and build the building, I could sell the operating company, which I did, and keep the real estate. Do you understand?
Yeah, interesting. So they became two separate companies,
They grew.
essentially. Yeah.
It took about 2 years, maybe 3, but then I realized what he was really getting at. He may not have done a great job explaining it to me. I think I'm doing a better job, but I did get it. So, and now I can't tell you how many of my clients. I have a home builder, a huge home builder. I won't mention their name, doesn't matter. They have a land development division and they have a home building division, and they were all one. And I went through the same lecture that I just gave you with them. And I said, you've got to separate them out. And your land development division should be selling their lots to your home building business. It shouldn't all just be in one bowl of spaghetti. Oh, they said that's a shell game. That won't make any difference. I said, it will make a huge difference. So it took me a while, about 2 or 3 years of coaching to finally convince them, because it was a big effort. They actually not only separated them out, they separated them out physically. They put them in 2 different buildings. And so the land development company became very aggressive, and they would say to the home building division, listen, if you don't want to pay us $3,500 a front foot for these lots, we got 10 builders in Ottawa, home builders in Ottawa, who will pay us that, right? So to hell with you, good luck, go buy some other lot somewhere else. And then the home builder company would go complain to the chairman. Again, I can't mention his name because you would know him, or certainly know of him. And he would say, look, they could sell it for $3,500 a frontage foot. Why should they give it to you for $1,500 a frontage foot? Their profitability exploded, because now the home building company was properly pricing their homes. They weren't underpricing them because they were being subsidized.
Right.
They had the right price signals. I don't know if it's making any sense, but that.
Yeah, it does for sure, because now you're not getting a discount on the land. And then, now you're trying to be competitive and price, accordingly. Otherwise, you're not making any profits.
They were making 13% on the whole deal. When they pulled them apart, that went to 35% between the two companies. That is a big difference, especially when you're talking in the thousands and thousands of homes, right? So let's say Elvia has a ZenScape operating company, and 20 years from now, you decide I'm going to go to Costa Rica and drink rum. You can sell ZenScape, but keep the real estate. And ZenScape is leasing from the buildings and land from you. And, do you understand?
Yeah.
Or you can keep the personal business for life and sell the real estate, or you can sell both together, whatever you decide.
Yeah.
Gives you all kinds of options, and you will find if you do that, your profit, you will increase your profits considerably.
That's brilliant.
Well, I can't take any credit for it. I wish I could, but I can't. So I'm just going to put this in an email to you. So hang on a second, just so you have it. And it's one of the reasons why also I wanted to record this. I'm going to put 1 + 1 = 3. So sometimes I write it 1 + 1 = 3, just to remind myself of what Wayne taught me. And sometimes I say, when does 1 = 2? All right. So that's just my shorthand way of referring to this. Okay. And I just put it into an email, and you should get that in a couple of minutes. All right.
Okay.
These are things that I really want you to know and understand. And if you are doing any coaching of yourself or accounting, you will bring the same knowledge to your clients, right? So a hell of a lot of them don't know this stuff. All right. Okay, enough. So your personal business for life is ZenScape, and your real estate is your real estate. Okay.
Yeah.
And I think that's where we're at. So I wanted to start at the end of your agenda. Let's go back. And just to make sure you understand what we're talking about here, So, I think I sent you some of these slides.
Yeah, you sent me the deck. I did.
I probably have added a few. I do that all the time. Okay. But one of my friends and clients, Nick Bott, this is what he does in backyards. He doesn't put swimming pools in. He builds true nature ponds. You can swim in them. There's fish in there. This is a backyard in a suburb. I mean, can you believe that?
Yeah, it's really nice. I did look it up afterwards as well. Like just kind of Googled online, and
yeah,
I didn't even know that was a thing.
Well, I didn't either until I met Nick, and he introduced me to this, and I went. I mean, imagine if you had a nice house in suburbia, and you had your friends come over, and they found this in your backyard, and they could hang there and have a glass of wine, maybe go for a swim. You can see the fish, right?
Hmm.
It's fantastic. Look at the kids are having a great time. So, what I really like about where you're going, though, is hot springs, right? If you do read Twilight Zone, the Idaho, they call them soaks.
Yep. I did finish your book, by the way.
Oh my God, you finished it!
I did.
You poor girl.
I was very dedicated.
You can tell me what you thought of it.
I thought there were a lot of themes packed into one novel. I think so. It took me much longer than I would with any other book. There were just so many themes, right? Like you're not just talking about real estate. There's like architectural design. There was even some cryptocurrency, with the Dubs dollars, and then there were some, other themes that were not even just like educational, like more so like novel themes. Like there was the witchcraft, and then there was some more sensitive topics on domestic violence and like, child sexual abuse. And, there was just a lot, I think, going on. So I would have to pause after reading each chapter to be like, okay, what was the takeaway? So there was definitely a lot that I learned from that book as well. And then also trying to draw those connections with, what's Bruce trying to say here? And how is it relevant?
I'm really glad you read it. And, it has, look, I write these books for a very small audience. I think the one book that would probably be an exception to that is the one I wrote for the 25th anniversary of the founding of the Ottawa Centers. And that one sold 75,000 copies.
Nice.
Which is not very much. I mean, what does J.K. Rowling sell? 100 million, 200 million. So it's a very small number, but still, it was a nice number for me. And that's easier to understand. It's hockey. It's Canada, right? It's it's real estate and other stuff here. But the learning outcome novels I write for a very small audience of people like yourself, who who have values. Who are trying to get ahead, who believe in honesty and trustworthiness. These are strong themes, and there's a little bit of godliness in it too, which some people don't relate to. I understand that. That's just my own personal view. But the predominant objective is to teach, but not just to teach about real estate and business, although there's a hell of a lot of that in there, but also to teach about, I taught my kids, and if I live long enough, I'll teach my grandchildren how to try and be, a good man, and a good person, right? A good woman or a good man. Men are more difficult to train. For every one or two women in prison, you probably have 90 men in prison, right? I mean, you don't often hear of women murderers or women rapists. It's just not a thing, really. But you certainly see a lot of violence. I mean, look around the world today, what's going on in the Ukraine and elsewhere. The world might be a better place. I'm not just saying because you're on the line with me, but the world might actually be a better place if women took more control. It is really terrible. So I wrote it, of course, for women, but also for many of the men I coach on how to try and be a better man. Virgil, respects women, children, he would protect his family as I would. I mean, obviously, I relate to that young man. All right. So, but it isn't meant to be easy.
Yeah.
It wasn't meant to be, but I hope you overall would give it that you enjoyed it.
I did. I saw some common themes of some of the things you teach as well with the workshops.
Oh yeah, I mean,
turning
well,
the building
that building in Belleville is
Yeah.
a character in the book, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's we spent 3 years doing that. Anyway, thank you very much for those comments, and I appreciate that. So anyway, as I understand ZenScape, it would be about Asian food, selling pre-prepared foods, which we'll talk about a little bit more, Asian wellness. It has a lot of really fantastic features to it. Combining wellness with food is, I think, really good, right? Because show me somebody who doesn't like to eat. There are some people who don't like to eat, but most of us do. And so I really like the combination of wellness and food. And the hot springs is wellness, and these other things, massages. I learned about cupping from you. I know acupuncture.
Yeah.
I really loved every part of it once I really understood it. In terms of pre-prepared foods, I'm just going to get out of this for a moment. In terms of pre-prepared foods, I wanted to show you, I mentioned to you by email that I have clients in Montreal who run a company called Le Naked Lunch.
Yeah.
And these are people who ran, you can see them here, they're very nice people. They ran a very successful restaurant, and they also had about a 12 or 15-foot counter at the front where they would sell their pre-prepared foods. So you could go to this restaurant and eat these wonderful, these guys are amazing chefs. Recipes are unique to them, I think. And so they came to me for some coaching. They had this restaurant that sold about $3 or $3.5 million a year. That was their gross revenues for back then. It's probably about 10 years ago now. And out of that, they would make about $175,000 out of $3+ million in sales. They didn't make very much money. Yeah. And they had, probably 40 or 45 staff. So a lot of work to run the restaurant. I think running a restaurant's a lot of work.
Yeah.
And when I took and again, I'm not much of an accountant, so I look at cash rather than some of the accounting statements. I just look at cash, because cash doesn't lie, at least in my opinion. So when I looked at that, I said, you guys are making $175,000 on the restaurant, and you're making about $450,000 on a 15-foot counter selling pre-prepared foods. Why do you have the restaurant? And right away, the light went on. And you got to remember, these are French people, so the writing here is not particularly good. Le Naked Lunch was founded in 2003. They opened the bistro in the winter of 2005, and they sold it in 2009, so more than 10 years ago. But they kept the gastronom. They kept Le Naked Lunch, the recipes and the pre-prepared foods. Yeah. They have a commercial kitchen in a warehouse where they produce these foods, and they sell them all in specialty food stores all over Canada, the United States, and they go to food fairs all over the world with their pre-prepared foods. They have so much fun, it's ridiculous, and they can run this business with a very small number of people, and it's very, very profitable. All right. So I'll stop sharing that for a second, and I'll go back over here. So there is a point to all of this, and that is that maybe what you might consider doing, and these are just suggestions for you to consider, is what you might consider doing when you develop your first ZenScape. I don't know if you're going to have 10 of them, but anyway, you'll have one. Is you might do something with a food truck.
Oh,
Food trucks can be commercial kitchens. People love food trucks. And it is a hell of a lot cheaper than building
and
a
building
restaurant.
yeah, that was another thing. Like when I thought about, hey, if we're gonna serve food, you'd have to build a building with a full kitchen and the inventory and the staff. And I was like, the servers. I was like, oh gosh, then your overheads just kind of.
Yeah, so you would end up like my friends in Montreal with a restaurant where you have a bazillion people and make a little bit of money, and it's a hell of a lot of work. I mean, oh my gosh, you don't own the restaurant owns you. I'm telling you, I swear to God. So I like less work, more money. Okay, while still fulfilling the need. And of course, it's on wheels. So it could also do events, right? And I wanted to show you, this is one of my clients here. This is a company called Burger Builder. And Burger Builder, this photograph is taken, excuse me, in a Home Depot parking lot. Now you can't get anything much uglier than a Home Depot parking lot.
Mm-hmm.
But out of this canteen, they sold in the 6 months they were open, 300, because it gets cold again. They sold $350,000 a year in food.
Wow.
It was
Awesome.
incredible. I mean, it was
are the margins really high in
the margins
like
are
food trucks?
decent, but that is for a food truck. Many of the food trucks are about 150 to 200,000. But from this particular location, I mean, it's burgers and fries, but the man who owns this business is a Red Seal chef. Like he produces really good quality burgers and fries.
Right.
Now, then what happened next was I asked him to ask Home Depot if this is an aerial photograph. This is a Burger Builder, and there's their seating area. I asked them if Home Depot would sacrifice a few more parking spaces, because Home Depot has like a bazillion parking spaces. And they said, what for? I'll skip a couple of slides here. So just another shot so you can see the seating area here, and there's the food truck. That's just another shot of it. So the reason I wanted them to have a few more parking spots is for this.
Nice.
I have a theory that people like couples, families, tenants who play together stay together. Like my family and I, we have all kinds of outdoor games. We got cornhole, giant Jenga, we got like mini golf, we got everything in the backyard here, right? Mm-hmm. So when my kids, we got outdoor ping pong, we got bocce, we got a bazillion of them, right? And when we get together, we play silly games. We don't play contact games. Like I'm not interested in that. I'm too old for that. So we don't play like 3-on-3 basketball because that could get pretty rough.
Yeah.
And my 99-year-old mother-in-law is not going to play basketball.
Right.
But believe it or not, she can play cornhole. So her name is Cora. We give her a beanbag. She's allowed to stand right over the board, and she just has to try and drop it in the hole. My 3.5-year-old grandson, Leighton, is 5 feet away. He has to throw it in, and I go regulation distance. And we have great games. A 99-year-old, a 70-year-old, a 71-year-old, and a 3.5-year-old. We have super fun. So what do you think happened to Burger Builder sales after they put the games in?
It went up.
Well, that's a good guess. The next year it was $425,000.
Wow.
Because people would come here specifically with their kids, and because we added a bunch more games, right? So he had a great menu. Here's his menu. I won't go through it. Just more stuff, more pictures. More pictures. I'm going to get to the next thing. More picnic tables. What we wanted to do, Home Depot didn't agree. I said, can we put a pickleball court in your parking lot? And they said, that's a bridge too far. No.
Yeah.
But it would have been great.
Yeah.
And we did silly things. Like we bought this Muskoka chair. I mean, this is a full-size man, so everybody would come here and you understand, we were doing silly things.
Yeah.
And his sales went up by about a third. Now I've got another friend of mine, a client of mine. This is a Caribbean island where I talked about the burger builder and the food truck model, and he loved it. And he now has a chain of these on this particular island. If I were to tell you his sales here, they're even higher than Burger Builder. He's got lots of games there now, and because it's so hot there, they don't open until 9 p.m. at night.
Interesting.
And he closes at 4 a.m. You could go there at midnight, and there'll be families there. I mean, I'm sure we could find a few kids in this picture. In this picture, I'm sure I took it at 10 o'clock at night.
I'm surprised they have customers between like 12 a.m. to 4 a.m.
Well, lots of young people like to drink, and afterwards they like to go and get some nourishment, right? He's super busy because it's so hot there. This is Curacao. If you know where Curacao is,
I've heard of it. I haven't been.
So if you know where Aruba is here, Curacao is here, and then Venezuela is just underneath them. So Curacao is about a 20-minute hop, skip, and a jump. So this is his menu: grilled chicken, steak, ribs, pork chop, chorizo, ribeye, all kinds of things. I mean, creamy oyster. What do you got? Garlic shrimp. I mean, Caesar salads. I mean, it's a hell of a menu. Side orders, French fries, et cetera, et cetera. I think it's really important for your concept to have food, not this kind of food, your kind of food.
Yeah.
But also to have what I call a playland, right? To add that, because, and again, games that everybody can play. Mm-hmm. All ages can play bocce, right?
Yeah.
You know what bocce is, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Everybody can play outdoor ping pong, right? Pretty much anybody can play pickleball if you have a room for a pickleball court, right? Yep. Everybody can play badminton. Just really, everybody can play cornhole. The beanbag toss game. Mm-hmm. Here's another one I just wanted to show you. I'm just trying to emphasize this for you. This is one of the toughest parts of Pittsburgh. This is where one of my clients opened a restaurant. When I talk about a tough part of an American city, any concept you have of how tough a part of Toronto or Ottawa or even Vancouver might be, it is nothing compared to, say, Texas or Pennsylvania. I mean, there's no comparison. So this is literally in the middle of nowhere, and in a tough part of town. And they do three things: beer, beef, and bocce. And the place has really good beer. They do craft beer. So the beer is great. The beef is whatever it is. And bocce is huge. And this thing, there are lineups from Thursday until Sunday evening. All right. This is just a picture I took some years ago when I went down to visit. Just so you know, Burger Builder, for example, the food part of ZenScape is very scalable. Just so you know, like how many Home Depots are there in North America? I wanted the young chef that I was coaching. I said, let's go talk to Home Depot Canada and Home Depot US and open a Burger Builder in 1,000 stores. He said, Bruce, I'm making so much money from one location. I got 3 little daughters, a wife I love. No. And listen, I understand it, but you understand there's a vector for fast growth when you're dealing with food trucks. If you find one group, whether it could be Canadian Tire, it could be Walmart. If you find one group that likes, Asian cuisine and likes what you do, and you combine it with some of the other things that we're talking about, that is very scalable. All right, just want you to.
And does Home Depot take a percentage of sales as well? Like, or are they just leasing that
You
section?
know, that is a great question. We never were required, you gotta remember, I'm coaching the young Red Seal chef, not
Yeah.
Home
Yeah.
Depot.
Yeah.
We never disclosed the sales. When they would ask how you're doing, I would say to the young man, say, we're doing okay, we're doing okay. But he was doing great. It gets better. You get 2 instead of 1. After a couple of years, I said to him, you close down, kind of, October-ish. He tries to stay open for Halloween. But November 1st, definitely he's closing. I said, well, you have a commercial kitchen there, right? He said, yes. So why don't you start doing some catering out of this thing? So he created a division, and it was a separate division with his own bottom line. Again, 1 + 1 makes
3.
There you go. So it was called Black Iron Catering, and he stayed open all winter, but not for retail, just for catering. And he and his 2 associates, chefs, they would cater parties, they would cater tech companies, and when the pandemic came, their business blew up, and they would deliver, right? I don't know if they were using Skip the Dishes or Uber Eats. It was one of those, right? They didn't do their own delivery. They just they farmed that out, right? And so if you were to do a food truck in the middle of winter and you did some catering and you used Uber Eats or whatever, Skip the Dishes or whoever it is to deliver, that Black Iron Catering became even bigger than the retail sales.
Wow.
Right? Pre-prepared foods. People are lazy and people have money and they like to spend it on food and entertainment. And you are in both businesses, correct?
Yeah.
All right. Sorry if I'm going on too long, but I just want to drill this in your mind. Okay. Now, I wanted to talk about, sorry, I'll just get out of this. If I can get out of here. I wanted to talk about 2 different financing models. Okay. And this is probably the most difficult thing I will try and teach you. I used to give a 3-hour, when I was a full-time professor, I used to give a 3-hour lecture, 2 hours and 45 minutes on financing. And at the end of that, my students were all going, this is great, this is fantastic. But almost to a man or a woman, they would come up to me in the next week or 2, sometimes a month or 2, and they would say, yeah, that's great, Professor, what you taught us about financing. But what I really want is rich Uncle Buck to give me a couple $1 million so I can start a business. That is what most people think is financing. That is not financing. That's just having rich Uncle Buck.
Yeah.
Who happens to have $2 million, and Elvia, here's $2 million, go and start ZenScape. Mm. I'm not saying that doesn't happen. If your mom and dad happen to be Bill and Belinda Gates, fine. But most of us don't have, I never had a rich Uncle Buck give me $2 million to start a business. And probably you don't either.
No.
Right. Your dad probably isn't going to write you a check for $2 million.
Nope. I'm writing them checks every month.
I wasn't going to ask, but that doesn't surprise me. You're a good person. But anyway, so this is really tough to explain. And like I said, I have wonderful students, like super, super smart kids, but they didn't get it. So I just going to give you the heads up that maybe I'll spend the next half hour explaining financing to you, and you might not get it. Again, most people think that it's rich Uncle Buck gives you a couple $1 million, go and start ZenScape, or I'll go get $2 million from investors. Easy peasy. It ain't so easy. Raising money from investors is a long, difficult process. It takes months, sometimes years, and you're going to wear out your knees. If you have a pair of jeans on, you're going to have holes in your knees because you're begging, could I have $100,000? So let me explain. Maybe I could show it best by showing you an example. And again, this is really tough to follow. I do understand that. This is a company that I coached for a while. It's quite a big company now. It's called Parkbridge, right?
Yeah.
Have you ever heard of Parkbridge?
Yeah, I think you high level went over their business model.
I think I did
last time. Yeah.
So, but this is very similar to what you could do with ZenScape. All right. So it would be worth, again, sometimes I do repeat myself, but usually when I'm repeating myself, even in the book that you read, I'm trying to push the ball a little further down the road.
Right.
Right. So I know I shared the slide deck with you, but I added a bunch more slides.
Okay.
Right? So I'm just trying to push it a little further. So what Parkbridge does, very simple model, but again, it sometimes goes over folks' heads. So what they do is they buy like an old campground that's kind of fallen on hard times. But at least it has some infrastructure there, probably has a few roads, probably has some kind of a water supply system, probably has some kind of sanitary system. It's probably not doing very well. It's run by grandma and grandpa. They have never really made a lot of money. The grandkids see how hard grandma and grandpa worked and made almost no money. They don't want it. And you can buy these things quite cheap. And for you, it's possible that you could buy some land from Carina Guzman, who I think we're meeting next week. Or you could go rent some land from Hammond Hill, which I've taught you a little bit about as well. But one of the thoughts I had was looking around, and you would have to do this. You know, you look on, LoopNet, right?
Nope.
Well, I have to stop sharing this screen then.
I'm gonna write that down.
No, I'm gonna stop sharing this screen, and we'll go there together. And I'll just show it because we're recording it. It'll be on. So this is one of the big U.S. and I think Canada as well. I don't know if they run. Yeah, I think Canada as well. This is one of the big sites for commercial real estate. It's called LoopNet. Another. Can you see it? Can you see the URL up there?
Yeah, I see it. And
then there's another one called Crexy. I don't know it as well, but it's pretty popular too. So you should be able to see the. Yeah, this is pretty good too. So because I know this better, let's say enter a location. I don't know, we'll try Ontario, see if it likes that. Look at that, Ontario, Canada. Enter, sorry, I screwed up. Ontario, enter space, restaurant, land. I don't really want land. Well, maybe I'll just have to use land for now. What I'd like you to do, I'll let you play with it because I don't want to spend too much time on it, but let's just go. It doesn't have to be Ontario. Maybe you like Florida better. I don't know. I mean, if you really like the US better and you wanted to do ZenScape, it doesn't have to be Ottawa,
Right.
Like you can get to Florida in no time at all. So one of the things that if you wanted to look for something, if I was going to do ZenScape at any scale, I would do exactly what Parkbridge has been doing, which is look for, I'm not sure I'd go to Thunder Bay, but this is campgrounds for sale in Ontario. But let's go campgrounds for sale. Do you have a favorite state? US state?
No, not really.
You like Vermont?
I don't go there that often.
Yeah, I can imagine why. Hey, I go down to Texas because I've got clients there in California and Florida.
I only go there if, for Disney. That's probably the only time.
Okay, well, we'll try
Universal.
No, sure. Florida's, I'm going to go Texas because I actually like Texas better, to be honest with you. Okay. So, okay, here we go. LoopNet.
Yeah.
Well, that's good. So, you know, here we have, let's see, what do we got here? Gas station, that's not a camp.
I know.
Oh, here we are. Trailer park, camper, investment opportunity. What else we got here? Industrial, this is crap. Yeah, it's not very good. Well, here's one. You know, look at this. I definitely wouldn't buy this thing. The next hurricane that comes along is whew, gone. So listen, we're not going to spend a lot of time on this, but what I would ask you to think about is we're going to talk to Carina, and I think you should talk to the Hammond Hill guys as well. Just bear with me for a moment. I'll explain why. But I want you to also, it's just practice and homework. I want you to look at LoopNet and Crexy and anything else. Campgrounds for sale, Ontario, Vermont, Texas, whatever, okay? And because think about how relatively easy it would be to convert a campground to a ZenScape. A lot easier to do that because you got the right zoning. You probably have some basic infrastructure, you know, like I said, roads and some water supply and some sanitary. And, you know, campsites don't make much money, but if you had beautiful tiny homes, did I ever show you what Humboldt Creek is doing with their tiny homes?
I don't recall. I don't think so.
You know, Hammond Hill has very basic tiny homes designed by men. That's your first clue, Sherlock, that they're going to be pretty awful. My wife right now, because we bought 2 of them from Hammond Hill, because they're clients of mine, I wanted to support them. My wife right now is redesigning them. Like they forgot things like, oh, when you show up and you want to put your clothes away, you know, your underwear and your t-shirts or whatever, well, they don't have any shelves. They don't have any drawers. If it's a bit rainy or muddy or snowy and you want to put your boots on, oh, they got nowhere for that. They got nowhere to mount the TV if you want to have a TV. I mean, they have a table that folds up that's just painted. Well, the moment that you spill something, it's going to be scraped to hell. I mean, it was terrible. So my wife's redesigning. It'll get a lot better. But I told the boys, the first time you do anything, you know, even ZenScape, I know you're going to do a great job, Elvia, but I bet you if you did a second one, it would be better than the first one. Right. It's just the way it is. I'm probably a better coach now. I'm certainly a better coach now than I was 10 years ago when I started, right? It just is. So don't beat yourself up if you're not perfect the first time out. Try and get it right the first time, but perfect, no. Good. Maybe even great, but not perfect, okay? So let's go back to the Parkbridge model.
Right, financing. I think that's
what we're talking financing, exactly.
Yeah.
So Elvia buys a campground for $1 million, okay? And if the owner is motivated, maybe we could get, I don't know, $600,000 in seller financing, right? You know what seller financing is, right?
Yep.
It's just seller take back financing. So Elvia has to find $400,000, not $1 million, because that's fast, right? They're the bank, and they're so keen to get rid of the campground. They haven't made any money in the last 5 years. Or whatever, and certainly, you know, campgrounds right now and Airbnb are doing this. You know that, right? Airbnb is crashing.
Yeah.
It's just it's dropping faster than a stone. So anyway, so you let's say you found a place for $1 million, and you got $600,000 in financing from the seller, and you had to come up with 400 grand. One of my young clients just bought an RV park, a trailer park, a mobile home park. And by the way, the modern term now is cottage park. It's just, you know, trailer park is a bad odor, right? You ever see the trailer park boys?
Yes.
Yeah, you know, we never use that word. So a Parkbridge is using cottage park, and that's the term that I would use. So anyway, so one of my young clients just did that, and it was about $1.2 million for this particular trailer park, cottage park. And it had, the good news was it wasn't full, and it had about 20 or 25 additional spots to fill. So what we did, or what he did, and I coached him through it, was we did a deal with a modular home builder. It was here in the Ottawa region. I won't say exactly where, but it was here in the Ottawa region. And we did a deal with a local modular home builder. I can mention the name of that because it's public. It's Gilchrist, which is to the south of Ottawa. And so you could buy one of these, similar to what you see here. They just come on a truck, on the flatbed, and they drop them on some kind of a foundation. Could be a screw pile foundation. Very simple to do. And he would buy them. In my recollection, he was buy them for about $150,000 because he was buying 20 or 25 of them, and he was selling them for $200,000 each. All right, so he was making about $50,000 on each one. If you multiply $50,000 profit from the sale of the modular house, and remember, he's not doing any construction at all. He's just buying them wholesale and selling them retail. That's all he's doing. He's just trading, right? And Gilchrist brings them in, and they drop them on screw piles. If you know what those are, they're literally what they sound like. They're just piles that are screwed into the ground, and fasten them, put this skirt around it, presto, you get your house. So if you take $50,000, around $50,000 he was making per home, and you multiply that by 25, figure out how much money that is. So he bought the place for $1.2 million. He got an $800,000 seller take-back mortgage. He had to come up with $400,000 to close, but by populating the rest of his property, he was able to pay off, a good part of his debt, if not all of it. So, if Elvia had bought some land from Carina, or you went and did a land lease with Hammond Hill, it would be very similar to that. At Hammond Hill, you would probably have to buy the tiny homes from Hammond Hill because they make them, they build them. But you would buy them wholesale, and then you would sell them to, say, an investor. And it's much easier to sell an investor a tiny home than it is to sell an investor an interest in your company. And how much, I don't know if you're following me, but how much equity do you have to give up in your company to raise money this way? Zero. So this young man owns 100% of this much more successful mobile home park. Because number one, he's gone from having about 30 sites to having over 50. And number two, most of the debt was repaid by sales. So an investor buys one of these tiny homes, and I should show you what, I'll get out of this, I should show you what Humboldt Creek is doing, because I love the guys at Hammond Hill, and they will do better in generation 2, but Humboldt Creek's been at it a little bit longer, and they're producing the next generation. They're probably producing tiny homes that are among the best in the world, because I coach a couple of big tiny home builders in the United States, and I think Humboldt Creek they're based in Canada, is probably going to surpass them in quality and design. So I'll show you what they're doing if I can find it. And they're super nice guys too. So this is the newest one. They call it the Noble. It's got patio doors here. It's got a person door here, windows here. This is actually a loft, so it's got windows in the loft. Beautiful interior. Just fantastic. This is the floor plan. So here is the master bedroom at grade. Well, what essentially is at grade. You've got kind of like an ensuite bathroom, if you know what I'm getting at. There's the bathroom, which is also accessible from the public area. You've got a washer and dryer here. You've got a kitchen here with a fold-out table. You've got a closet. You've got kind of a counter here which could be a workspace, could be an eating counter. You've got a sofa bed here, so you can sleep 2 people here, and this sofa bed pulls out so you can sleep a 3rd person there. But what really helps is you walk up these cubby stairs, and you've got this enormous loft up here with windows on either side. And we can't, because of the Ontario Building Code, we can't call that a 2nd bedroom. We just have to call that storage space, but it is in effect a 2nd bedroom. So in theory, you could have 2 people here, 2 people here, 1 person here. You could sleep 7. It is really a good plan. So I'm just showing you what is in my mind. You buy a campground, or you buy some land from Carina, or you lease some land from Hammond Hill, doesn't matter. It's all the same principle. And, you know, on 5 acres, you asked me how many sites you could have. Well, at Hammond Hill, it's quite a few. Have you seen pictures of Hammond Hill?
I have. I've seen some on reviews and some on their social media.
Yeah, but I'll show you if I can.
It's a lot of sand.
Well, that's a good thing, though. That for a ZenScape, I think that would be fantastic. I love sandy areas, because usually in Ontario, you with a little shovel, you dig down a foot or 2, you've got beautiful ponds, right? So let me see if I can find here. I went out and visited them in August. And I'll just show you this. So this is Hammond Hill. It's still under development.
Yeah.
So you can see, I mean, at Hammond Hill, you know, this pond is probably half an acre, maybe a little bigger, but I don't think it's probably half an acre. So on 5 acres, how many of these could you put on there? Or if you didn't like these units, you know, how many of the bigger units could you put on there? A hell of a lot. I don't know how many, but a hell of a lot. So this is these are the Hammond Hill small living company units.
Yep.
They've got quite a lot of stuff already going on there. The beer garden. And this was while it was under development.
Yeah, I was thinking more grass and trees and in between the units as well.
100%. This is these are just under construction.
Yeah, like all the sand. Like
Yeah,
if that's the finished product, it looks very construction site type of feel.
It does. But it will change, you know, it will change. But you know, you can see that you don't have to have sand. There's plenty of nature there, right? These are just, you know, what you want to do around your pond, though, is you would like to have a beach around your pond.
Right.
All right. Anyway, these are toboggan hills that they're building. But there's lots of nature there too. I'm not telling you what to do. But anyway, this is they're going to do concerts here, weddings here. You know, you could have a church gathering here, whatever. These are just me showing you some of the pictures I took there. They've got yurts there. You can see that it's not all sand, right? So just different things. But let's see if I can find some other stuff here. You can see that they've got different things going on here.
Yeah.
They've got a barbecue truck coming soon, the Hillside Barbecue. They've got a food truck. Guess who thought of that idea? Right. Okay, that's enough of that. So, so I drew a picture here. These are my notes before we were getting there. So, you know, you'd have wherever you go, you're going to end up with your hot spring. And we're going to create a hot spring that's green, right? I mean, we could just heat up a pond, but the cost of natural gas would be ridiculous. So I'm suggesting something called geo-exchange, which I'm going to talk about in a minute. So you'd have a pond. I don't know if you can see my picture, but there's a pond. And this in the middle is a bubbler. Do you know what a bubbler is?
No, but I've seen it in ponds. Like, is it supposed to keep oxygen flowing? So
it does, but also in the wintertime, it prevents ice from forming.
Oh, okay.
All right. So, and then you'd have lots of sites with whatever tiny homes you want on it. And you could have these portable workshops, and then here I drew the food truck over here, right? So you could have one, you could have 10 food trucks. I don't know. You have a food truck here, you have a workshop here. Now let me explain how the financing works. One, you're selling these tiny homes to an investor. So you buy them for whatever, $90,000, and you sell it for 120 or 130. So you're making, $20,000, $30,000 on every one. So that helps you. But then what you're doing is your operating company says to the investor, so let's say my wife and I bought one, we bought a couple at Hammond Hill. We're going to make a certain amount of money, but Hammond Hill will make a lift because they're going to put it on Airbnb or short-term or medium-term rental, or they're going to do something with it. In your case, people will come, and what do you think somebody would pay to stay overnight at ZenScape to experience all the things that you've been talking about? What do you think they would pay per person?
Oh, I was hoping a minimum 250.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I talked to you about my clients who run Whispering Springs, right? The tree houses. It's like $650 per person per night. It's crazy.
Do they include like all the food and amenities and?
I think for $650 a night they do include a nice meal, one meal.
Okay.
Bottle of wine and some meal. But if you want 10 bottles of wine, you're going to have to pay for the other 9.
Right.
But yes, but it's very expensive, right? They're close to Toronto, and Toronto people have real money. It's crazy. Yeah. Like $650 a night. I think in the shoulder seasons it's $550, but it's not cheap. So let's say it's $250 per person per night. So you're making $500 a night, and let's say you sell out 20 nights a month, right? So you're making 10 grand. Your investor is getting, I don't know, $1,000 for return for him, and maybe he or she, they get a few percent of your gross revenues, right? You might say, look, I'll pay you $900 a month rent. I'm renting, you're buying them, and I'm renting them from you, and so you're guaranteed say an 8.5% return, but I'll also give you 4% of whatever revenues I generate, right? So that might be another, or 5%, maybe you give them another $500. So now they're making 12 or 13% on their, you ask yourself, why not just go to rich Uncle Buck and buy, 10 tiny homes yourself for, I don't know, $1.1 or $1.2 million? Well, because you got to have $1.1 or $1.2 million to do that. And you're going to slow down your expansion that way. If you have 10 investors and they're not buying into your company, they're buying it. And if they don't like you for some reason, the damn thing's on wheels. Come with your Ford F-150 and take it away. I'll get somebody else. Do you understand?
And are you also charging the investor to park that house on your land as your Airbnb?
You're paying the investor, for the rental of that thing. So you're going to net it out. So he or she or they are paying, so that I bought a tiny house and I'm going to pay you $250, $350, $500 a month, whatever it is, to park it there. But you're going to rent it back from them. And so, you just net it out.
Got it.
Right. I know it's really complicated, but Parkbridge went from 2 or 3 sites 25 years ago to over 100 today. Company's worth a couple of $2 billion. They must be doing something right.
Right.
Okay. So what happened, and this is, again, it's not my methodology. It's just that most people, again, think an investor is going to own part of Elvia's company, and you're going to have a bunch of partners. And you know what they say about partners? They're 2 chairs in heaven waiting for the first 2 partners to get there and still like each other. Right? Mm-hmm. You understand?
Yeah.
Running partnerships is not easy. Being married, I've been married for 39 years, and it's been a great 39 years. I love my wife, but you have to work at it. Marriage is like anything else. You have to work at it, and partnerships are hard. Like I said, if the investor doesn't like you for some reason, get your F-150, take it to your cottage. I don't care. Right? There'll be somebody else who want to do it. Right? So the numbers I'm working on, you'll have to refine them, and we will refine them together. But it's the concept that I'm trying to drill into. And it doesn't matter whether you're leasing the land from yourself, because remember, we have these two different companies, the operating company and the real estate. And if you lease from Hammond Hill, you could get into this business really fast if you wanted to. We could just go out and say, look, Elvia is going to roll 5 tiny homes onto the site here. You're going to dig a lake for her. She's going to do the geo-exchange. She's going to do all kinds of cool things. We're going to put a workshop there. We're going to put a food truck because it's going to be Asian cuisine. And you could be in business next year. If you buy a campsite somewhere, probably it'd take another year to get into business. That's not necessarily a bad thing. You could do that. If you buy land from Carina, probably also take at least 2 years to get into business. So one is faster, but both approaches are fine.
Mm-hmm.
That's something only you can decide.
Yeah, definitely my preference is I'm okay with the slower approach with owning the land as opposed to leasing it, just with the flexibility of
100%. No, I get that.
Having the real estate. And what are your views? Like, I know you've spoken about, Ottawa quite a fair bit. And a lot of your clients are from there as well. But in terms of the demographics and the demand, of operating out of the GTA in Toronto or closer to Toronto as opposed to Ottawa.
100%. Well, I mean, Whispering Springs, I mean, they're open from sort of May 24th until early September. That's it. And they make millions of dollars.
Wow.
And the rest of the time, the owner is super, super nice. He's a very good family man, runs a fantastic business, but, he closes down. It probably takes about a month to shut everything off properly. And he takes off with his family, doesn't come back probably until February.
Nice.
So, there's nothing wrong with that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, I understand that. But we're going to talk to Carina anyway. I mean, it's just one of the things that about life is it's all about practice, right? Mm-hmm. The greatest Canadian basketball player ever, Steve Nash, said the definition of a professional is the person who the day after the greatest game of his or her life gets up and goes to practice. Right? That's me. And I think that's probably you too. The person who's not as good has a great game, goes out and gets drunk, and comes back 3 days later, hungover. Right? Mm-hmm. That's not you or me, I don't think.
No.
All right. So if you like the GTA, try and find the worst campground within 50 miles or maybe 100 miles of the GTA, the worst one, right? And the piece of, excuse my language, the piece of shit that nobody else wants because they don't understand how to take it from a piece of crap to something really good.
Yeah. So within 100 miles of Toronto?
Yeah. You want to be, Toronto, listen, my wife and I were in downtown Toronto. We were going to Niagara on the lake for some reason, I don't remember what. And we left Sunday morning at, 7 because we're up early. Huge traffic jam. Sunday at 7 a.m. Mm-hmm. It was summertime, mind you, but even at 3 o'clock in the morning, you know this, Toronto are busy. Yeah. I have a cousin in LA. I went out to visit with my oldest son, and it was we were there till about 2. I don't know. I think we were playing backgammon, and our hotel was maybe 45 miles from my cousin's place. He has a beautiful house on the beach in Hermosa, and I said to Andrew, it's 50 miles or 45 miles, but at this time, it'd be 60 miles an hour. We'll be there within an hour. Not a chance. It was a shift change, wall-to-wall traffic at 3 o'clock in the morning. I mean, so I would think that Toronto might even be, 2 hours away. Ottawa would be, you wouldn't want to be more than, 45 or 50 minutes because people in Ottawa are spoiled, right? But in Toronto, people will drive 2 or 3 hours. If we were in Alberta, they'll drive 5 hours. In the Midwest, I've got a few clients in the Midwest, an 8 or 9 hour trip to watch a National Football League game. Oh, that's not far. So I think you look for the biggest piece of crap campground that's been for sale forever. Doesn't matter, you're going to replace everything, right?
Okay.
You'll have the right zoning, and hopefully we'll find a motivated seller. Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Should I engage like a realtor to help with that, or just myself?
Question.
Just 100% myself. Yeah.
That is a great question. Okay, I got some bad news for you. I'm glad you have a sense of humor. I really like you, Elvia. I think you're a great kid. And having a sense of humor is really important in life, because it can be very difficult. You already know that. So here's the bad news. When you hire an architect, if you do hire an architect at some point, architects don't know anything about animation. You know, the stuff that I do. They don't. If you were building any kind of a building, office building, shopping plaza, multi-res, mixed use building, whatever, industrial building, they don't know anything. The only thing, I taught 14 years in the School of Architecture at Carleton, and the only thing they really teach there is how to design a pretty building. They don't even teach how to design decent interiors. You understand? They don't. And so a lot of my clients are very disappointed to find out, first from me and then from their own experience, that when they hire an architect, the architect, all he or she can do is design something pretty. And there's nothing wrong with a pretty building. I love pretty buildings, but I also want buildings that work for the guests, the tenants, the investor, the owner, the city, the neighborhood, the neighbors, the users. I want things that work. And architects are terrible at that. All of this is going to come from you. I have a shopping plaza that I own, and I wanted to put a couple of beach volleyball courts next to the pizza restaurant, right? For the same reason I talked about earlier. It'll drive and the architect couldn't understand. And the city planner said, why would you do that? This is a retail plaza. I said, well, because people like playing volleyball. And if they do that, they'll probably drink more beer and eat more pizza. And sure enough, they do. But you couldn't get a planner to if you tortured him or her, you couldn't get them to imagine such a thing. And architects are no better, unfortunately. Realtors, don't forget I'm a realtor too. And I don't want to be overly critical, but realtors are no better. They don't understand real estate. They certainly couldn't find their way around, most of them, way around a spreadsheet. They know nothing about highest and best use or animation. And they're a bit lazy. Most human beings are lazy, right? You know that. I'm not. And I know you're not, but most people are. And so if you ask a realtor to find you something, what he or she is going to do is they're going to find you a mobile home park in the United States that's available for $15 million. So, hey, listen, this is great. You should buy this. Because A, they get a bigger commission if you buy something for $15 million than if you buy a piece of crap for $800,000. And B, they don't understand what it is that you're actually trying to do. And C, don't tell them. Because if it's a good idea, they'll steal it, some of them. Do you understand?
Yeah.
So when you find something that you like, what most of my clients do is they send it to me to vet. And I would want you to do the same thing, because I've done a lot of this in the Canada, United States, a little bit overseas, but mostly the States and Canada. And I try not to conflate my realtor work with my coaching work. So I would just act as your coach. And what we would do together, if you want, as your coach, is we would put together a deal points memo, right? Do you know what that is?
Nope.
It's simply a 1 or 2 page summary of what the deal points are, what we think it's worth, what the offer price is going to be, what some of the conditions might be, what some of the due diligence has to be, what the deliveries look like. I mean, I've got 1 million of them on my computer. So you and I would work on that together. And then you would hire a realtor. And your realtor, all he or she will do for you is take orders from you. But really, they're taking orders from us. Just that I would want to be silent on that, because I don't want to conflate the realtor work that I do with the coaching. So we would work on a deal points memo. You would say, yeah, that looks right. You'd give it to your realtor and say, look, this is what we think should go into the offer. The realtor draws it up, and her job or his job really basically is present it to the seller. That's it.
So they get the commission for
They get a commission.
next to no work.
Well, they do a little bit of work, and hopefully they can negotiate something. But most realtors are really not able to help you very much. And I'm sorry that most architects won't really help you much either. It has to. That's why I'm training you. And if you added a realtor to this call, it probably wouldn't help much. And if an architect came here, I literally have to order my architect, like on this plaza that I own. I literally had to say, either you're going to draw this up for me, or I'm going to fire you. You're just going to have to take my word for it that it makes sense, right? And it's a good thing to do. One of the great architects of the world, he's now passed away, told me, his name was Eric Kuhn. I mean, there are good architects, don't get me wrong, and there are good realtors too. It's just that not many. And if you find a great realtor and a great architect, you can add them to one of our calls anytime. I'm cool with that, but I do not want some dummy on this call saying, "Oh, you can't do that."
Mm-hmm.
You know, they're asking $2 million. They're asking $2 million for the property. You got to offer $2.5 million. No, we don't. We're in a real estate recession. Do you understand?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to take any orders from a dumb ass, excuse my language, but a dumb ass realtor saying you got to offer over ask to get this campground that has no income, no net operating income, or very little. Right? No, we're just not doing that. If you and I think that it's worth 800,000, I don't care if they're asking 2 million. We're going to offer 800 grand. Yeah. Your job as the realtor, Mr. or Ms. Realtor, is to present the offer. And if they don't like it, keep your goddamn campground. Sorry for the language. I get frustrated.
Yeah, and if the trajectory of Airbnb is, on a downward, spiral, and I get ZenScape has a different value proposition, being the hot spring and, all the added amenities and services, do you think that category would, weather the storm? Like I would presumably like we would list on Airbnb to start, right?
100%. And I'll tell you what the good news is. I told you the bad news, but here's the good news. If you buy a campground, it will have commercial tourism zoning, which means you could put it on Airbnb or Vrbo or Expedia or Booking.com till the cows come home. The reason that Airbnb is dropping is cities like Toronto, Ottawa, New York City are effectively banning Airbnb. You know that, right?
Yeah.
Airbnb went from, I think, 15,000 listings in New York City down to like 300. How would you like to own that business today? I mean, and by the way, they're blaming the wrong guy. They're blaming Airbnb for a housing shortage. Take New York City as an example, just to show you how stupid these planners are and these politicians are. It's all politics and it's all BS. Excuse me again, my language, but it's all BS. The 15,000 apartments that were on Airbnb in New York City are dwarfed by the 100,000 apartments that New York City lost over the same period of time as rich dudes bought, 3 apartments and joined them all together. Are you following me?
Yeah. What did they do after they joined them together?
Oh, they live in them.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. So you meant they bought multiple units.
Yeah. So you go into a housing co-op and there was 3 apartments that were rented out to Sally and Mary,
right,
and Bill, and kick them out, and you buy them, right? The 3 apartments, you buy them, and you knock out some walls. You spend $20 million on the renovation. I mean, it's ridiculous, but that's what they're doing. It's not an affordable rental anymore, and it used to be 3 rentals. It's now 0. 100,000 units went out the door through that kind of renovation in New York City, while Airbnb grew to 15,000. It's beyond stupid, but it's easier to whip, to get out the whip and say, oh, Airbnb is causing a housing shortage than it is to actually solve the housing shortage. And also, if you're a politician, those people, those rich dudes who are doing these combination apartments, making, 3 apartments into one big one for themselves and their families, those people have money and they're political donors. So you don't pick on them. They're so look, Elvia, you're in a business now, which is a miserable political mess. Justin Trudeau knows as much about providing affordable housing for Canadians as I know about sewing, which is nothing. I suppose I could sew a button on, but I couldn't design a garment. I mean, he knows nothing. And Justin's not alone. There isn't a mayor in Canada. There isn't a premier, a governor of a state, a president. They know nothing about the business. They know nothing. They just have. Remember, I talked about sheeple. You'll never forget the word, right?
Yeah.
Sheeple. They're all saying Airbnb is terrible. Well, Airbnb has nothing to do with the housing shortage in Canada. Nothing, or the United States. Nothing.
Yeah, well, they're just pointing fingers at anybody possible, right? They're
That's
pointing
right.
it at the universities, the colleges.
Yeah, oh yeah, they're blaming foreign students now for coming to Canada
exactly.
and taking an apartment. Where the hell are they going to live in Canada while they're going to school? I suppose they're going to be homeless, like so many people in Toronto or San Francisco. It's terrible. It's ridiculous. All right, so where were we? We got to keep going.
Yeah,
I want to make sure we get through your agenda. All right, let's go back to make sure that we understand one more aspect of your business.
I think you started on the geo-exchange.
Yes, I did, and I'm going to get to that. But before I do that, I wanted to show you one more thing and then we'll talk geo-exchange. I want to make sure you understand geo-exchange because you're going to be an expert at this. The fact if we do a GTA version of this, and we had hot springs that were green. Boy, oh boy, I'll tell you, I think you're going to have a real winner there because people will still come for a novel experience. Food, wellness, and hot springs, which is part of the wellness. It's a dynamite combination. It took me a while to understand it, but I wanted to show you that this is one of my workshops. I like backyard workshops, right? You know that.
Yeah.
And a young woman, her name's Maya.
Oh, I said, yep.
Yeah. So Maya came to see me. This is before the pandemic, so probably 2017, maybe 2016. And she was a yoga instructor, and she's a single mom. You can see the picture. And she wanted to rent one of my apartments. Have you ever heard this story from me?
I think so. I think she ended up renting it from you.
She ended up renting the apartment and starting her own yoga practice in this backyard workshop, which was very nice. And now she's making about $125,000 to $130,000 a year instead of $39,000 to $42,000 as an employee elsewhere. So she's an entrepreneur. She's doing very well. And just a lovely tenant, lovely person. Both my wife and I enjoy having her in one of our properties. The reason I show you this is another aspect for ZenScape that's really important. You're going to have maybe the buildings will be prettier than this, right? I know you'll do something better. But there are lots of places you can go and you can get prefab buildings that are quite pretty. This is just a workshop. I didn't build this thing. It was just there when I bought the property, and I didn't even know what to do with it until Maya showed up, right? So what you're going to do is you're going to, as part of ZenScape, is you're going to have some of these buildings on your property. And this is where people who practice acupuncture, teach yoga, and the other kinds of things that we were talking about, this is where they are going to hang out. Are you understanding me?
Yeah.
But here's the thing that I think is really important, which is a little tweak on this, and that is they rent this from you. You just become the landlord. I mean, you do what you think is right, but if I owned ZenScape, I would have somebody, say somebody like Maya, rent that, and that's her yoga studio at ZenScape. And she pays me a rent, and she pays me a percentage rent. But she runs the damn thing. Because what I don't want you to do is be like the Naked Lunch, where you have 45 people running a restaurant. You know what I mean? And I don't want you to have to, run a yoga studio. I don't think you want to do that.
No.
So you get somebody like Maya who rents that thing, and if she makes, in Toronto, if Maya here in Eastern Ontario, she can make $125,000 from this neighborhood thing in Toronto. Who knows what you can make? Probably quite a bit more, because people in Toronto have more money. But you're just collecting money. You're collecting rent and a percentage rent, and you don't have to worry if a yoga instructor is sick or somebody cancels, or a class. You have any idea how difficult it is to run a yoga studio?
No, but it sounds difficult. Just managing the bookings and the staff.
It's just like running a restaurant, right? All right. So I wanted to make sure that I'll just get out of this now. I wanted to make sure you understand. So you own the building, and you're either leasing the land, or in your case, probably buying the land. It's at the campground. You could put a bunch of these buildings there, and you could have the acupuncture building. You could have the yoga building. You could have the Tibetan singing bowls. Remember that?
Yeah.
I think I actually listened to this. It's very nice.
Yeah, it is. It's very soothing.
I feel better already. Isn't it nice?
Yeah.
It's
I
fantastic.
mean, the sound doesn't come through Zoom, but
I'm sorry.
I own some Tibetan bowls myself, so.
I'm looking forward. All right, so I want to go back to this guy. Remember the sketch that I sent you?
Yeah.
All right. So geo-exchange is different from geothermal, and it's really important for you to understand that. Geothermal is like in Iceland, and in Idaho, and in British Columbia, where they have vents from the Earth's crust that shoots hot material close to the surface of the Earth, and it heats up the water. I mean, the water can be boiling hot. Right? You read the book.
I did.
So you know that one end of I've been in these soaks. One end is so hot that if you actually sat there, you would burn yourself, right?
Yeah.
So you have to be a distance away. Geothermal is you won't have that in the GTA. I mean, I don't know how far down you'd have to go to get geothermal heat in the GTA, but probably at least 1 or 2 kilometers. You're not doing that. That's really expensive. So what you do instead is, let's assume that you find a campground that has a pond or a lake, or some ponds and a lake. You find one, and what you're going to do is you're going to do 2 drilled wells. So this is a drilled well. It's got a casing, and you drill down to wherever the water table is. Probably you'll find decent water anywhere from 30 feet below surface to 70 feet below surface. All right. So the wells are not too deep. And a well like that, which has to be properly engineered, is probably between $6,500 and $8,500 today. When I was your age, I could do it for $1,500, but that's a long time ago. So it's probably about $6,000 to $8,000 for each well. And what you're doing is there's a pump in the well, and it brings water out, and it goes to a heat exchanger here. And the water, 30 to probably 50 feet below the surface is year round around 55 degrees Fahrenheit. Okay.
Yeah.
And so in the wintertime, you're pulling water that's 55 degrees, you're putting it through a heat exchanger, right? And spitting it out here, probably at body temperature, maybe a little bit higher. Obviously not boiling. Boiling point for Fahrenheit is 212. You're definitely not doing that. People will get hurt, right? Yep. But you might bring a water in here at, body temperature is 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit. So you might bring it in at 101 or something like that. You can heat this thing up. And then what's nice about geo-exchange is that you take the water as it cools down and you pump it back into the aquifer. So you're not removing water from the aquifer. Do you understand? So yeah. It's very green. And I had a beautiful 5-bedroom executive home. Maybe it was bigger than 5 bedrooms. Maybe it was 7 bedrooms. I don't remember. It's a long time ago now. Where I had enough room for the 2 wells. And I could heat my house back when it was costing most people with oil, you know, $500 or $600 a month. I could heat my house for about $80 a month. All right. So geo-exchange, it's not perfectly green, but it's a hell of a lot greener than just burning natural gas.
Right.
All right. And on the next page here, we should look at that just for a second. The way we harness geothermal energy for heating and cooling is through what is called a geo-exchange system. So this could be to heat up a house or cool it, or it could be a pond. Put simply, geo-exchange is the transferal of energy from one source to another. In a practical sense, this can mean exchanging the stored heat in the earth to your home using a heat pump to condense the energy. This is most commonly done by laying tailor-made pipes, you can see the pipes here, in the ground called a ground loop that are connected to a heat pump that pushes water through the loop. In winter, the water in the underground pipes absorbs heat from the surrounding earth and carries it back to the heat pump, which condenses the heat and then distributes it through the home. In summer, the process reverses itself, okay? So you don't have to worry about reversing it, because in Canada, even in the GTA, which is warmer than Ottawa, in the GTA for sure, you know, even in the summer, you'd probably be running the thing because you want it to be warm in the summer too. So I don't know what the temperature of a hot spring would be that you would be happy with. Would it be just above skin temperature?
I probably have to do a bit more research on what is the norm and what people like. Because like have you gone to St. Anne's Spa out in Grafton, out east, past Whitby? I think it's even past Oshawa. So they have a whole bunch of outdoor pools that are operating all year round. I don't think they use geothermal or geo-exchange heat, but they have like, I know, like 5-6 pools out that are outdoors, and they're all different temperatures. So I think it kind of appeals to a wide audience.
Yeah, I think you would probably have, you know, and don't forget, it's very, very, very simple to in a pool like we're talking about. It's very simple to have one end of the pool being really hot, you know, not burning hot, obviously, but very hot. And if, you know, so my wife would be in this end of the pool and Prof Bruce would be the other end of the pool. Like, you know, if we have a bath, you know, she'll get in the bath like a seal in water, and it doesn't matter how hot it is, she just slides in, and I have to go I have to wait, you know. So, you know, the nice thing about a pond is that you'll have a gradient, right? And I think that's good.
Okay.
But one end it'll be really hot, and at the other end it'll be quite a bit cooler, and people can move back and forth, right? It's just like in Twilight Zone. Just before we run out of time, I wanted to show you one other thing that I really wanted to think about for ZenScape.
Yeah. Sorry, just before you start on that topic, so a thought came to mind about that food truck. Would that be similar to the workshops where you're renting it out for someone to operate the food truck, or is that something, you know, you could run in-house?
100%. Again, running a food truck, like my Red Seal Chef, that is it's not as bad as running a restaurant, but absolutely, you're going to rent that out. You rent out the parking space, and you get a percentage rent. Got it. You know, you don't even have to buy the truck. They have their own truck, and you could have, you know, if you're popular enough, you could have a food court. You could have 3 Asian cuisine trucks, different cuisines, right? I call that food truck city, right? And you've got the playland, and you've got the wellness, and you know, I mean, there's a reason why you get a Starbucks, a Tim Hortons, a Dunkin' Donuts, a Second Cup, why they're all together, right? Because maybe, you know, you like Starbucks, but yeah, you get tired of it and you get a Tim Hortons, and you get tired of Tim's, so you go and get a Dunkin' Donut. You get tired of Dunkin' Donut, you go to Second Cup. So you often see in Toronto or any city really, you know, stores flock together because it's again, if you had 4 of these, 4 coffee shops, 1 + 1 + 1, 4 ones make 6. Do you understand? Because that's the node where everybody goes for coffee. right? So if you had 2 or 3 or even 4 or 5 food trucks, that would be fine. Because you're not going to eat the same food all the time. All right.
Got it.
Show you this. This is, I think, a very important part, or potentially important part of what you do. Whatever. I don't know what happened here. Let's try that. Oh, there we go. This is an environmental center called the Bill Mason Environmental Center. And one of the things I was going to encourage you to do is to have an outdoor classroom. This is a huge deal. You'll see some more slides here. I've done speeches out here. I've had classes out here, right? Even in the wintertime, we'll go out and use it, right? And it is just an incredible experience, right? So if you have, you know, a corporation, a wellness retreat for a company, right? Because I expect companies will be using your facility, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can do presentations here. You know, they have a blackboard. You know, you could have, if you wanted, you could have a large screen TV. You could have, you know, internet, whatever you have. But we have intentionally kept this extremely low tech, right? I mean, you can bring your laptop if you want, but we have kept this very low tech. You can see that we have, this is, you know, part of our nature area. This is one of the subdivisions I own. And we have, you know, it's just absolutely beautiful. And it's really popular.
Yeah, reminds me of the retreat I went to in Mexico. They had these outdoor pavilions like these where we did yoga, meditation sessions, and all that.
Yeah, you can use them for any number of things. We use them for presentations and teaching. We also have, it's right next to a high school, so they do, you know, the idea, Elvia, to me, of keeping little kids and high schoolers indoors and under fluorescent lights with bad air, what a terrible idea that is.
Mm.
So, I mean, you'll have school trips, you'll have corporations using it, and sure, you can move the tables and chairs, and you can do yoga out there. It's perfect. So, I think we did quite a bit today of the agenda. I don't know if we got everything done, but we got quite a bit done. What I need you to do is, in the next couple of weeks, do some of the searching that we talked about, right? Look for, you know, campgrounds that are really at the end of their economic life. And if you find any, send them to me. I'll comment back to you. I think that would be the quickest way and the fastest way for you to expand your real estate and get into business. The other thing is, I think you should start to generate a roster of people who will do some of the things that we talked about. Maybe they have a food truck, and, you know, with and of course it has to meet your standards, right? It's not going to be burgers and fries.
Yeah,
we know that. You should have a roster of people who will do cupping, Tibetan bowl,
singing bowl. Yeah.
Singing bowls, exactly. I love that. You should have somebody who's doing acupuncture. You should start to, you know, just get together a loose group of people that, you know, they haven't made any commitments to you or you to them, but you say, look, I'm going to set up something called ZenScape, and you know, you know, so that when we find a place, we're not starting right then. Oh gosh, where are we going to get food services from? You know. You know, and you should look for some you know, some supplier of pre-built buildings that literally you can just plop on your site to where somebody could run a yoga studio, right? They could run an acupuncture, and you don't need a big building for that, right? But you should also be collecting some design themes, right, that you like, so that everybody knows what your branding is going to look like. That's very important.
Okay.
Right, so you have a lot of homework to do, but until we find a site, it's just a theory.
Yeah.
So number one on your list is, can we find a site that has some physical beauty, you know, that hopefully has some water features. Yes, it's been degraded because mom and grandpa have really basically neglected it for the last decade or more. We want to buy it cheap. I'm not interested, and don't think you are either, in buying something that's top notch from say Parkbridge for $25 million.
No. So what's considered cheap in terms of dollars per square foot on campgrounds?
Well, you know, I think you're going to find a 40 to 50 acre campground in the $1 to $1.5 million range. I think that's what you're looking for. If it was in top shape, it would be in the millions, but we want something that's crap. One of my clients bought 177 acres. Okay. 177 acres. It had not one, not two, but 3 homes on it. It had 8 RV sites. It had 50 acres of tillable land. It had over 4,000 feet of frontage on the lake. It's the second best fishing lake in Ontario. It's close to Eganville, which is kind of near to Algonquin Park, if you know where that is.
Yeah.
It had 3 hunting and fishing cabins on it. It had a workshop with full of equipment, and he bought it for $700,000.
Wow.
Wow.
What a steal.
You know, I mean, I helped him purchase it. I'm an investor in it. And I mean, it was exactly the description I talked about. It was an older individual, super nice man, and his family. And he was going to transfer the ownership of this place, which he had spent his entire, it even had a wood-fired boiler that heated all the buildings with underground pipes. It was incredible. Wow. I mean, the amount of work this man did, and he was going to transfer the ownership to his only child, a young man, nice young man. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, the young man was in a terrible car crash, terrible, and his brain was damaged. And he would still be able to talk to you and walk around, and he could go out in the boat and fish, but very limited, and it was a terrible situation. And the problem is that a lot of young people your age, they don't want to live, you know, or to work an hour or two outside of Toronto, or Eganville, which is an hour away, I think, from Algonquin Park. Mm. They don't want that. They want to party with their friends, right? They want to get drunk and stoned on the weekend with their pals. Well, that's not interesting to me. And by the way, even when I was a young man, even though my friends would sleep till 1 o'clock in the afternoon because they were so drunk and stoned and, you know, hung over and doing all kinds of drugs. That was never interested me. I was up at 6 out in the outdoor rink as a teenager. You know, my friends wouldn't show up until the afternoon. They missed half the day. I just thought it was crap. And you're the same as me. And there's lots of people like us, right? That's why I wrote the book, right? For people like us, not for people who drink all the time and get stoned all the time and don't do anything. The trailer park boys, right? I'm not interested in those guys. Yeah. Okay. So I'm telling you, there are bargains out there that are ridiculous. One of my clients during the pandemic, bought a motel. I helped him buy a 54-room motel, in Florida for $100,000. 54-room motel, 2-story. They bought it for I think it was $110,000 US.
Can't even build a structure for that cost.
You can't build a living room for that. No, and it was quite a nice building, and it was a great piece of land. But unfortunately, the older couple, this is what's going on now. The older couple who owned it, it was the pandemic. It was 94% vacant. They were losing about $10,000 to $12,000 US a month just holding on to it, paying the property taxes, keeping it clean and neat, and for the few guests they have staff. They were losing money, and my client is a rich Canadian. He's very well to do, a young man. He's worth $30 or $40 million, and I said to him, you should buy this. He said, well, what? It's empty. What the hell am I going to do with it? I said, I have a plan. Because those units, those motel units, all of them had micro kitchens in them, and they were like little tiny suites. I said, we're going to convert that immediately to long-term rentals. And remember, in Florida, there's no such thing as a landlord-tenant act. Somebody doesn't pay rent, call the sheriff, they're out.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, and he said, oh, that's a good idea. So he bought the damn thing for, and he asked for a seller take-back mortgage on it, 50% from the old fella. And I was representing him, but I said to him, no, we're not doing that. Right on the call. I thought that was, I mean, he's worth tens of millions of dollars. He's going to have a $55,000 seller take back from the old dude who's had no future, and his poor wife. I mean, I said to him, I won't mention his name. I'll call him Bill. I said, Bill, no, we're not doing that. You can afford to pay $110,000. We're clear. All right, I didn't give him any choice. It was bullshit. So he paid the 110 grand. He bought the thing. He spent about $5,500 a unit, replacing shitty carpets and repainting it and everything else. And within 10 or 11 months, every unit was rented. His cap rate was so high. I mean, you can't even calculate it. I don't know what it was, 80%. 100%. It was 80%, I think, something like that. Once you get a cap rate above 15 or 20%, you can stop calculating, right?
Yeah, that's crazy.
It was just ridiculous. But the thing is that the old fella and his wife didn't understand real estate business models or animations. They, so I'm representing my client, so I'm not going to disclose that to the sellers. They were delighted that they were not going to have to spend $10,000 or $12,000 a month, which they didn't have, on property taxes and operating costs. So they got out from under it, and they got a little bit of money so that they could, I don't know what they did with their money. And in addition to that, at the front, there was a house which was part of the motel where the old fellow had lived. And my client, Bill, has renovated that beautifully. And now he has this beautiful 5-bedroom house at the front of this hotel with the motel sticking out over here. And that's his winter residence now. And his cap rate is over 80%, but it's all long-term.
Yeah. So is that
I'm sorry, that's not actually accurate. I asked him to keep, I think, 8 units for, not as a motel, but as Airbnb. So he has some short-term rentals and he has some medium-term rentals in a few of the units. That's just a little bit of gravy, right? But the rest of it is just long-term rentals, probably 80% cap rate. I'm pretty sure that's the number. I could look it up. So there are lots of opportunities, and no realtor is going to find you that. Like in my case, I'm a coach. That's what I really like doing. I do some real estate transactions as well, but I like being a coach, and I don't care. I want my clients to do well, if you know what I mean. I got clients now who are closing in on $500 million of assets, right? Which is great. And I have lots of former students of mine. I've got a couple of students who may own a couple of duplexes, which is fine too. I'm just as happy about that. Okay.
I'm probably one of your most greenest clients.
Yeah, I don't know. I've got, I told you about 40% of my clients are women. I'm a chick magnet. Yeah, I like women, and I think, they do the work. They're not looking, men are always looking for shortcuts, at least in my experience. Women, in my experience, they do the work. They're not looking for shortcuts. They pay attention to detail, and they're very good operators. That's a generalization, but that's been my experience over 10 years. And I suspect you'll be in that category too. So it's okay to be green. I'm here to help you walk through this, okay? I'm really excited about it, but you've got to do some homework. I want to hear from you. I need a mid-month report from you in the next 2 weeks, and I want you to do the homework.
Okay, sounds good.
And don't forget, if you practice, it'll become second nature to you, right? No different than playing learning how to shoot a basketball into a hoop. That's what we're doing here. So if you looked at 50 opportunities and 49 of them were horrible, that's good. Do you remember what Mr. Edison said when he tested 5,000 different filaments to make a light bulb? Did you know that? 5,000
No,
different materials he tried to make a light bulb. And he got a lot of criticism from the press of the day. Oh, Mr. Edison, you're a failure. What do you mean I'm a failure? I've learned that 4,999 things don't work. That's a hell of an accomplishment. Those things don't work. And then he found one that wouldn't burn out in 30 seconds, right? And then he became the most famous, or one of the most famous men of the modern era, right?
Mm-hmm. Just
So
one thing about the finding.
If you find 49 horrible real estate investments, that's fine. You're going to learn to recognize what's good.
Mm-hmm. And just about the point on finding a supplier of buildings, like the modular buildings, you know, is the direction, you mentioned tiny homes a few times.
Well, the tiny homes, listen, you're going to come, I think, to that, I'm going to do something that I really want you on, and you already agreed to come. You're going to meet the Humble Creek guys.
Mm-hmm.
For tiny homes, listen, you can buy from whomever you want, but I'm telling you, you're going to like the Humble Creek guys. They're producing really good units. They're down to earth. They're lovely people. I think, you know, and I like the Hammond Hill guys, but Humble Creek is much more in tune with your brand than Hammond Hill. You understand?
Yeah, and I was just wondering, like, what about like all the other accommodation types, like, you know, like domes, you know, A-frame homes, and you know,
well, you know,
container homes, like all the other types of
right.
structures.
So you know, I'm buying some domes from Phoenix Domes, right?
Yeah.
So in terms of domes, you know, they're based on Salt Spring Island, but they are rated for. They have the engineering drawings for Ontario weather. So and they're 4-season domes. So Phoenix Domes, I think, is a great supplier for that. Humble Creek, I think, is a great supplier for tiny homes. So
have you heard of Nova Dome in Alberta?
No, I haven't. But
yeah.
You should do your own research, because no doubt about it, you'll find some suppliers I don't know about. So domes and tiny homes, I do have 2 suppliers that I like and trust. But if you find some tiny home supplier or dome supplier you like better, that's fine. I'll learn from you.
Right.
But on the sheds, the modular sheds, you're looking for a company like this. Maybe these aren't the guys for you, but these are the people that I've been buying from, right? And again, this might not be consistent with your brand, so you could find your own. But I've been buying lots of these guys, and this is a company in Smith Falls. They ship all over Ontario. You can buy, you know, buildings like this for 10 or 12,000 bucks.
Yeah.
Right.
And these are for the potential like services, right? Like
Exactly.
the yoga, the
Yeah.
acupuncture.
Yeah. I mean, let's say, I don't know what your brand is. I mean, you have to decide, you know, that was part of the homework. Don't forget, Elvia.
Yeah.
I want you to get some pictures, you know, do you ever use that there's it's based on pictures, you know, social media based on pictures. I forgot what it's called. I actually have a social account there, but you should do a picture board of what the brand is going to look like.
Okay.
You know, it's like a collage, right? You should do that. So I mean, I have no idea, but you know, imagine if I was doing acupuncture in here, or I was doing physiotherapy in here, or registered massage therapy in here. I mean, you know, I'm not saying that's part of your brand, but you can buy something like that for like between 10 and 15,000 bucks, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, there's all kinds. I mean, you know, they have all kinds of different ones. So this is an example of one. It's called northcountrysheds.com. But there's going to be a million shed manufacturers within 50 miles of GTA. There's going to be just a bazillion of them. So but first you have to decide what your brand looks like.
Yeah.
You have to find somebody, whether it's tiny homes or domes or sheds or whatever. Yeah. But you know, if you can find a campground, we can convert it to a ZenScape real fast. It'll be fast.
Yeah.
Within 2 years, we can definitely do it, I think.
Yeah, I think the only
One
difficult
more thing I
part.
meant to mention to you was on your list. We didn't really do it. We have to do it next time. We should talk more about financing.
Yeah.
I did want you to, more homework, unfortunately for you, but I did want you to, I'm going to put this in the chat box. I may have mentioned it already. If I have, well, too bad. It's called the Canada Small Business Loan Program.
Okay.
If you could copy it out of the chat box.
Yep.
I want you to study that. It's a wonderful program. 75% of any loans that they make to you are government guaranteed. So if things went wrong, you're only responsible for 25%. Government of Canada picks up the other 75%, and they go up to a million, $1.5 million. The other thing I wanted to talk to you about next time, and I may have already talked to you a little bit about it, is RRSP financing.
Right.
We can go up to 95%, about 95% loan to value with RRSP financing. And you have quite a few RRSPs.
Yeah.
All right. And we'll talk more about that, but you have to put that on the agenda. So you've got some homework to do. I'm expecting a mid-month report. Look for some of these campgrounds if you can find one. Hopefully like the one at Constant Lake, the $700,000 special that I talked about. Keep an agenda. Every time you think of a question, you write it into your agenda so that the more detailed that agenda is, the better value I can create for you. Okay.
Yep.
Because I got 2,500 clients. I won't remember I've got a good memory, but I don't remember everything. So I don't want to repeat things, but at the same time, that means I need your help.
Okay.
Elvia, it's been a real pleasure.
Yeah, likewise. Thanks, Bruce.
See you soon.
Okay, bye.